Title: A single dad shared a bed with his cold stepsister. Her whisper changed everything. The night I agreed to share a bed with Claire Bennett was the night everything I believed about my life started to break apart. For 7 years, Claire and I had perfected the same routine. Cold silence, careful distance, a kind of polite hostility that fooled everyone around us. Family dinners, holidays, birthdays. We could stand in the same room and act like strangers who barely knew each other. And everyone believed it. What nobody knew was that 7 years ago, Claire Bennett was the woman I loved more than anyone in the world. Now she was my stepsister. And on the coldest night of the year, in a small mountain cabin with a broken heater and nowhere else to sleep, we were about to share the same bed. The cabin smelled like pine and cold wood. Snow hit the windows hard enough to rattle the glass, and the wind outside howled through the trees like it was angry about something. I stood in the doorway of the small bedroom, staring at the queen-size bed like it was a trap. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. My mom stood behind me wrapped in 2 blankets. Her tired smile told me she already knew how I felt. "Noah, honey, I know this isn't ideal." "Not ideal?" I turned toward her, lowering my voice so the others in the living room wouldn't hear. "You want me to share a bed with Claire?" Mom winced slightly. The heater in the guest room had died 2 hours earlier. The couch was already taken by my Uncle Tom. The storm outside had buried the road in snow, and nobody could leave until morning. It left exactly one option: this bed. "You're adults," she said gently. "It's just one night." One night, that was the problem. Because one night meant 8 hours trapped in the same bed with the woman I had spent 7 years pretending to hate. 7 years pretending I had never loved her. "Fine," I said quietly. The word tasted like surrender. But that had become my specialty. My name is Noah Miller. I'm 29 years old, a single father, and for most of my adult life, I've been the guy who sacrifices what he wants so everyone else can be comfortable. I learned that skill young. At 21, my life changed forever when a girl I barely knew told me she was pregnant. 2 months later, my daughter Emma was born, and everything about my world shifted overnight. College, dating, freedom, all of it disappeared. Emma became my life. And I never regretted her. But the truth was that long before Emma was born, before my life became diapers and daycare and night shifts at work, there had been someone else. Claire. The woman standing in the living room right now. I walked out of the bedroom and saw her immediately. She stood near the window, holding a mug of tea, staring out at the white storm outside like she wished she could disappear into it. Claire Bennett. Dark hair pulled back loosely. Oversized sweater hanging off one shoulder, jeans tucked into winter boots. She looked smaller than I remembered. More fragile. But the moment I stepped into the room, her shoulders stiffened slightly. She knew I was there. Some things never change. My Uncle Tom looked up from the fireplace and grinned. "Well, good news. We figured out sleeping arrangements." I already knew what he was about to say. "You and Claire will take the back bedroom." Silence fell over the room. Claire slowly turned around. Our eyes met. 7 years of distance lived inside that look. 7 years of pretending. "I can sleep on the couch," she said quickly. "No room," Tom replied, "and the living room is freezing." Claire glanced at me again. I kept my face blank. Emotionless, the way I had trained myself to be whenever she was around. Finally, she nodded. "Fine," she said quietly. "But I'm taking the left side." I shrugged. Wouldn't dream of arguing. An hour later, I stood alone in the tiny bathroom, brushing my teeth and trying to convince myself this was survivable. One night. Just one night. I had survived harder things. I had survived becoming a father at 21. I had survived raising Emma alone while working 2 jobs. I had survived watching Claire across family dinners for 7 years without touching her. Surely I could survive sleeping beside her. Right? When I walked into the bedroom, she was already in bed, turned away from the door. Her dark hair spread across the pillow. She had pulled the blankets tightly around herself and kept as close to the edge of the mattress as possible. Like she didn't want even an inch of contact between us. I changed quickly and turned off the light. Then I climbed into the bed. The mattress shifted slightly under my weight. Claire moved another inch away. The space between us felt like miles. Outside, the storm roared against the cabin. Inside, the silence between us was even louder. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. I stared up at the ceiling and counted my breathing. In, out, anything to keep my mind from thinking about the woman lying 3 feet away. Then her voice broke the silence. Soft, unexpected. "How's Emma?" My breath caught. Claire never asked about my daughter. Not once in 7 years. "She's good," I said carefully. "She stayed with her grandma this weekend." "That's nice." "Yeah." Silence again, but it felt different this time, less sharp, more sad. Then Claire asked something I never expected. "Do you regret it?" Quote, "What?" "Becoming a father so young." I stared into the darkness. "No," I said honestly. "Emma is the best thing that ever happened to me." Then I exhaled slowly. "But the way it happened, the choices I made, yeah, I regret those." The bed shifted slightly. I felt her turn a little toward me. "Me too," she whispered. And just like that, the walls we built for 7 years began to crack. Memories flooded my mind. Claire laughing outside a coffee shop the day we met. Her hand in mine during movies. The first time I kissed her. The night she whispered against my mouth that she was falling in love with me. I had been 20. She had been 19. And for 6 months we had believed our future was simple. Until the night our parents told us they were dating. Claire's voice broke through the darkness again. "Do you remember the bookstore?" I almost laughed. "Of course I remember. You were pretending to read poetry. I was reading it. You were staring at the same page for 20 minutes. It was a good page. It was upside down." Despite everything, a small laugh escaped me. The first real laugh we had shared in 7 years. "You're making that up." "I'm not." I could hear the faint smile in her voice. "You were nervous." "I was terrified," I admitted, because she had been the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. And I had known the moment she looked at me that my life had just changed forever. The smile faded from her voice. "When did everything go wrong?" she asked quietly. I knew the answer instantly, 6 months after we started dating. The night we found out our parents were in love. And suddenly the woman I loved had become the one person I wasn't allowed to have. The silence after her question stretched across the dark room like something fragile. When did everything go wrong? I already knew the answer. The problem was that saying it out loud meant reopening a door we had both kept locked for 7 years. I shifted slightly on the mattress and stared into the darkness. "It went wrong the night our parents told us they were in love," I said quietly. The words hung in the air between us. Claire did not respond right away. Outside, the storm continued to slam against the cabin windows. The wind pushed snow against the glass with a steady hiss that filled the quiet spaces in the room. Finally, she spoke. "I remember every second of that night." Her voice sounded distant, like she was watching the memory from far away. "So do I said. The memory came back so clearly it almost hurt. 7 years ago, we had been sitting together on the couch in my apartment. Claire's legs were curled under her and she had stolen my hoodie like she always did. We were halfway through a movie when both our phones buzzed with the same message. "Dinner tonight, important news." From our parents. We thought it was strange, but nothing serious. When we arrived at the restaurant, they were already sitting together, smiling in a way that made my stomach tighten before they even spoke. Then my mom reached across the table and held her dad's hand. Claire and I looked at each other in complete confusion. And then they said the words that changed everything. "We're in love. We're getting married." In that moment, the woman I loved became someone I was suddenly not allowed to love anymore. I heard Claire take a slow breath beside me in the dark. "I thought you were going to say something that night," she whispered. "I wanted to." "Why didn't you?" The question hit deeper than she probably realized, because the truth was ugly. Because I had already made the decision before she even asked. Because they looked happy, I said quietly. Claire shifted again on the mattress. "What does that have to do with us?" Everything. The words came out heavier than I expected. My mom spent 15 years alone after my dad died. I watched her work 2 jobs and come home exhausted every night. When she looked at your dad that night, she looked happier than I had ever seen her. The room stayed quiet. I couldn't take that away from her, I continued. Not for my own relationship. Quote, Claire's voice came back sharp and hurt. So you decided for both of us? I closed my eyes. Yes. The mattress moved suddenly. Claire rolled onto her back and stared up at the ceiling. You never even asked me what I wanted, she said. I knew what you wanted. You knew what you assumed. Her words carried years of buried frustration. You just walked away from me like I meant nothing. That's not fair, I said quietly. Isn't it? Quote. The tension in her voice made my chest tighten. You stopped answering my calls, she continued. You avoided every place we used to go. And when our parents finally got married, you acted like we had never been together. Because pretending was easier than explaining. Because the truth would have made everything worse. I was trying to protect everyone, I said. Claire laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. That's the thing about you, Noah. You always try to save everyone except yourself. Her words settled heavily in the room. I had no argument. Because she was right. A few minutes passed before she spoke again. Do you know what I did after you walked away? She asked quietly. No. I waited. The word surprised me. For what? For you to come back. I turned my head slightly toward her voice, but the room was too dark to see her expression. How long? I asked. A year. My breath caught. A whole year I told myself you just needed time. I told myself you were confused, that eventually you would come find me and we would figure it out together. Her voice softened. But you never came. Guilt twisted inside my chest. I thought you hated me, I said. I was hurt, she replied. Another long silence settled between us. Then she added something that made my heart drop. And then you got someone pregnant. The words were not cruel, they were just honest. I ran a hand through my hair and exhaled slowly. That wasn't planned. I know. She was someone I barely knew. I know that too. But Emma happened, I said quietly. And once she was born, nothing else mattered anymore. Claire's voice softened. I've seen pictures of her. You have? She looks like you. Quote. The simple comment warmed something inside my chest. Everyone says that. She has your eyes. For the first time that night, the distance between us felt smaller, but there was still something heavy sitting in the room. 7 years of unfinished feelings. 7 years of questions. Claire shifted again on the bed. Then she asked something unexpected. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. With what? With your life. I thought about that for a moment, about my small house, about early mornings making breakfast for Emma, about working long hours, about quiet nights after she fell asleep. I'm content, I said slowly. That's not the same as happy. No, I admitted. What about you? I asked. Claire was quiet for several seconds. Then she answered honestly. I built a good life, good job, good apartment. Friends who care about me. But there's always this empty space I can't seem to fill. The words settled heavily between us. I knew that feeling. We both did. Because that empty space had a name. Each other. Another gust of wind rattled the window beside the bed. The storm outside had grown stronger. The cold air in the room felt sharper now. Claire pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Then she said something so soft I almost missed it. Can I ask you one more question? Yeah. If our parents had never met. She hesitated, then finished the thought. Would you have married me? The question hit my chest like a sudden wave. I didn't even need time to think. Yes, I said. The answer came instantly, without doubt, without hesitation. The room went completely still. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then the mattress shifted again. Claire slowly rolled onto her side, facing me now. Even though the darkness hid most of her face, I could feel her eyes searching mine. And when she spoke again, her voice was barely louder than the wind outside. "Then why did you never tell me that?" Claire's questions stayed in the air between us. "Then why did you never tell me that?" I lay still for a moment, staring into the darkness. The storm outside had not slowed down. Snow continued to strike the windows with a steady rhythm, and the wind pushed against the wooden walls of the cabin like it was trying to get inside. But the real storm was in the bed, right there between us. "I thought telling you would make everything harder," I said finally. Claire did not respond right away. I could hear her breathing in the quiet room. Slow, careful, like she was trying to keep her emotions under control. "You already made it hard," she said softly. Her voice was not angry now. It was tired. 7 years of tired. I swallowed slowly. "I know." The mattress shifted slightly as she adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. "You disappeared from my life overnight," she continued. "One day we were planning a future together, and the next day you acted like I was just some girl you used to know. That wasn't what I felt. Then what did you feel?" The question came quickly, too quickly. I hesitated, because the answer was something I had buried for years. "I felt like I lost everything in one night," I admitted quietly. Claire took a slow breath. "You could have fought for us." "And destroyed our parents' happiness?" I asked. "They are adults," she replied. "They could have handled the truth." Maybe she was right. Maybe we had both given up too easily. But at the time, it had felt impossible. "I thought I was doing the right thing," I said. "For who?" she asked. The question hung heavily between us, because the honest answer was simple. For everyone except us. The wind outside slammed hard against the cabin again. The sound made the window rattle in its frame. Claire pulled the blanket closer to her neck. "You always carried the weight of everyone else's happiness," she said quietly. "Even when nobody asked you to." I did not answer, because she had always understood me better than anyone else. That had been part of the problem. Another long moment passed, then she asked something unexpected. "Are you lonely?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about it for a moment. About the quiet nights in my house after Emma went to sleep. About the empty side of my bed. About how long it had been since anyone looked at me the way Claire used to. "Yes," I said honestly. Claire did not seem surprised. "I am too," she admitted. The confession felt strangely comforting. Two people lying in the same bed, admitting the same truth. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Inside the room, something softer was happening, something neither of us had allowed for years. Honesty. Claire shifted slightly again. This time, she moved closer, not enough to touch me, but enough that the distance between us felt smaller. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked. "About what?" "Us." The word carried a quiet weight. I exhaled slowly, more than I should. "Me too." Her voice was almost a whisper now. Another gust of wind hit the cabin, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Claire shivered slightly. Without thinking, I reached for the extra blanket, folded near the foot of the bed, and pulled it over both of us. Our hands brushed for a second. Just a light contact, but it felt like electricity. Claire froze. So did I. 7 years of distance suddenly felt fragile. I slowly pulled my hand back. "Sorry," I said. "For what?" "For touching you." Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said something unexpected. "You used to touch me all the time." Her voice held a soft sadness. I remembered those days clearly, holding her hand while walking through the city, pulling her close during movies, brushing her hair away from her face when the wind blew it into her eyes. Simple things. Things that had once felt natural. Now they felt forbidden. "We were different people then," I said quietly. "Were we?" Her question lingered. I did not know how to answer it, because the truth was that lying beside her right now felt painfully familiar, like no time had passed at all. Claire shifted again. This time her shoulder moved slightly closer to mine. Still no contact, but close. Very close. "You know what I hated the most?" she asked softly. "What?" "Watching you pretend you didn't care about me." My chest tightened. "That wasn't pretending," I said quietly. That was survival. For who? For me. She was silent for a moment. Then she asked another question. Did you ever love her? I knew who she meant, the woman who became the mother of my daughter. No, I said honestly. Not even a little. No. Why not? Because my heart had already belonged to someone else. But I did not say that out loud. Claire seemed to understand anyway. You loved me, she said softly. Yes. The word left my mouth before I could stop it. The moment it did, the room felt different. Like something important had just been spoken after years of silence. Claire's breathing changed slightly. You said that like it's past tense, she whispered. My heart beat harder. Because she had noticed. And because she was right. I had said loved, not love. The problem was that my heart knew the truth. I just wasn't sure if I had the courage to say it. Claire moved again. Slowly. Carefully. This time her hand slid across the blanket. Not touching me, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of her skin through the fabric. Then she leaned slightly closer and spoke in a voice so soft it barely existed. Noah, she whispered. Yes? Quote, her breath was warm against the quiet darkness between us, and then she said the words that changed everything. I never stopped loving you. Her words settled into the silence of the room like a secret that had been waiting years to be spoken. I never stopped loving you. For a moment, I could not breathe. The storm outside continued to rage against the cabin, but inside the room, everything felt completely still. 7 years of distance, 7 years of pretending. And with one quiet sentence, Claire had shattered all of it. I stared into the darkness between us, my heart beating so loudly I wondered if she could hear it. You shouldn't say that, I whispered. Why not? Her voice was calm. Too calm, because it doesn't change anything. Claire shifted slightly closer on the bed. The blanket moved softly between us. Doesn't it? She asked. I ran a hand across my face and exhaled slowly. Our parents are married, I said quietly. You know that. Yes. You're my stepsister. I know. People would never understand it. Maybe. Her answers were simple. Too simple. Like the complications that had ruled our lives for years did not scare her anymore. But they still scared me. This isn't a movie, Claire, I said. Real life is messy. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. Real life has already been messy for 7 years. I did not respond, because she was right. 7 years of pretending we meant nothing to each other had not made life easier. It had just made us lonelier. Claire turned slightly on the mattress again. This time her hand moved across the blanket until her fingers gently touched mine. The contact was soft, careful, but it was real. My whole body froze. We had not touched like this in years. Do you still love me? She asked quietly. The question sat heavy in the dark. Part of me wanted to lie, because telling the truth would open a door that had been locked for too long. But lying to Claire had never worked before. And it would not work now. Yes, I said. The word felt both terrifying and relieving at the same time. Claire's fingers tightened slightly around mine. Her hand was warm, familiar. You took 7 years to say that, she whispered. I was trying to do the right thing. And how did that work out? Quote, I let out a quiet breath. Not very well. A soft laugh escaped her. It was the first real laugh I had heard from her in years. You were always terrible at choosing happiness, she said. Maybe. Another gust of wind hit the cabin and the lights flickered briefly before going dark. The room fell into complete blackness. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Claire shifted closer. This time her shoulder touched my arm. The contact sent a quiet warmth through my chest. Are you scared? She asked. Yes. Of what? Of ruining everything. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that felt strangely simple. Everything already feels ruined. The honesty in her voice made my chest ache. 7 years of distance had not protected us. It had just kept us stuck. Claire slowly moved a little closer. Now our arms were touching. Neither of us pulled away. "Do you know what I kept thinking all these years?" she asked. "What?" Quote, "that if we ever ended up in the same room long enough, we would finally talk about it." "Well," I said softly, "here we are." The storm outside continued to roar through the mountains, but inside the small cabin bedroom, the world felt very small. Just two people, one bed, 7 years of unfinished love. Claire's voice softened. "You always believed you had to sacrifice your happiness for everyone else." "I still do." "You don't have to." I turned my head slightly toward her. "Why?" "Because our parents are happy," she said gently. "They have been married for years now. Their lives are stable. Nothing we do tonight changes that." Her words settled slowly into my mind. For years I had believed our love would destroy everything, but maybe that fear had never been real. Maybe it had just been easier to run away than to face the truth. Claire's fingers squeezed mine again. "Look at what we did to ourselves," she whispered. 7 years. 7 long years. I felt something inside my chest finally loosen. Something I had been holding on to for too long. "You know what the hardest part was?" I said quietly. "What?" "Watching you move on." Claire shifted slightly. "I never moved on." I turned toward her more fully. Even though the darkness hid her face, I could feel how close she was now. "You dated people," I said. "Yes." "Why?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Because I thought you had stopped loving me." My chest tightened again. "I never did." "Neither did I." The words felt simple, honest, the way love should have been all along. The storm outside finally began to calm. The wind softened. The snow against the window slowed. Inside the room, Claire moved even closer, until her head rested gently against my shoulder. Neither of us spoke. For the first time in 7 years, we were not pretending. Not hiding. Just being honest. After a quiet moment, she whispered something against my shoulder. "You know what the strange part is?" Quote, "What?" "This is the most peaceful I felt in years." I understood exactly what she meant. All the tension, all the distance, all the pretending. It had disappeared the moment we finally told each other the truth. Claire lifted her head slightly. Then she said the words that would change the rest of our lives. "Noah," she whispered softly. "Yes? What if we stopped being afraid?" I looked toward her in the darkness. For years, fear had controlled every decision I made. Fear of hurting people. Fear of ruining our families. Fear of choosing my own happiness. But lying there beside Claire, I realized something simple. I had already spent 7 years losing her. I did not want to spend the rest of my life doing the same thing. So I squeezed her hand gently. And for the first time in 7 years, I stopped running. "Then maybe," I said quietly, "we finally start living."